The reason I got interested in the devotionals was that I think that, someone mentioned last weekend that there are Beltane Solid pagans, and that's all they do. And it seemed to me that we always talk about 8 high days in ADF and how they're important, but it's like, what do you do the rest of the time? You just do your high day and then you go on with the rest of your life and nothing happens. I'm a big proponent or a big fan of daily devotions, and I'll try not to gloss over some of this, but what is the nature of devotion? Why are we interested in doing devotional? Why are we interested in prayer? What's the value behind it? What's the purpose behind it? We turn to prayer, and we'll get to devotional. So it's like we turn to prayer because we need something. I talked about this earlier. My pet is sick. My mother is sick. I need a job. I need some money. I need these things, and I can't make them materialize. I need help. So I turn to the divinities or to whomever and ask for help in these things. So we like to say in ADF that it's good to build relationships first. I use the example of if I were to walk out on the street right now and stop a person and say, "Would you lend me $20?" That person would say no because they don't know who the hell I am. And they're probably thinking, if I give this guy $20, I'm never going to see him again. So it's kind of like when we talk to God. I mean, not that they're so brusque, but the idea is, I think when you approach someone and ask for something, it's best to have a relationship first. At least they know who you are and what to expect. Maybe the gods expect very little. Maybe they expect a relationship to be established. So we make offerings to build relationships, and this is the nature of prayer, the nature of asking for things. The gods are the ones that can change the material universe. They're the ones that can work outside of the bounds of 3 dimensions. Maybe they work in more dimensions, and they can make things happen. So that's it. Building relationships helps to facilitate that process. I'll tell you a quick story. Moved into an apartment a number of years ago. And I'm a materialist. I mean, I live in the material world. I have my spiritual thoughts, but I don't think I'm necessarily a woo-woo person. And so I'm carrying the first few boxes into my apartment. It's living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, bathroom. So I bring the stuff in. I have my cell phone, my ever-present cell phone with me. It's not here, though. I'm kind of lacking it. And so I walk in there, I put the box down, I put the cell phone down in the bathroom because the boxes were for the bathroom. And I start to walk out, and I said, I better take my phone with me. I go back into the bathroom. I'm the only person in the apartment. The apartment is empty. I go back into the bathroom. I stepped out in the hallway. I go back in the bathroom. The phone is gone. And so I'm like, maybe I didn't bring the phone with me. So I go downstairs. Say to Rhiannon, and I'd say, "Do you have my phone?" She's like, "You had your phone with you." So we go through this conversation, look through the car, look through the van, and I said, "Well, why don't you ring me and keep ringing until I answer?" Because I figure if the phone's in the apartment, where can it be? It's an empty apartment with 2 boxes. So, and I have it on vibrate as I usually do. So I walk into the apartment, and I hear, So I start looking around, and so it's coming from the 2nd bedroom. So I walk into the 2nd bedroom, and the phone is balanced on the top of the door. So I kid you not. I was like, what in the hell is going on here? So I said to Rhiannon, I said, "What do you think?" She says, "Sounds like a household spirit." And so I called a friend of mine who's a priest, and I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Sounds like a friendly spirit, make offerings." So I decided at that point that it was a time to make an offering to this household spirit. So I put some bookshelves in, and I took a little shot glass, put some whiskey in it, and I developed a devotional practice for this household spirit. And it took a while to kind of get to know each other. I think there were other spirits in the house, but there was one main spirit. And so over the course of time, I incorporated some things. I won't go into detail because of brevity. But I built a relationship. I built a devotional practice that included this spirit, and I call it lares. I call them household spirits. And so I use a stone. I call it a Hiwazi stone. The Hittites used Hiwazi stones, large stones that were temple analogs. If I could not build a temple, and I had a big stone, I would treat that stone as the temple, or as the god or goddess within the temple. Anoint it, wash it, make offerings, but it's a stone. So I use the same thing. I have a little cup, a little espresso, a cup of water, and every morning, the Vedics, you step back for a second, the Vedics get up in the morning, and devout Hindus get up in the morning, they go to the bathroom, they cleanse themselves, and they go pray. So I took that kind of the same route. I get up in the morning, no disrespect intended, and let the dog out so the dog can go do their thing. I wash my hands, and then I have a little devotional thing. I say, I dip my fingers 3 times into the water, and then I anoint the stone. And I say, I welcome to you my lares. I welcome you to another day of friendship and peace. Thank you for watching over my home, my heart, and my family. And this is the practice that I had, this devotional practice that I established. And it's a devotional practice because, A, I saw for myself the presence and the presence of the spirits of that place. And I also wanted to acknowledge them because I really, in this apartment, I felt so protected by that spirit. I had one instance one evening where, I felt that it was a kind of a manifestation in a way of that spirit. And I'm not a manifestation in that kind of way person. It was, kind of an unusual occurrence. And even my cat was like, so I figured if the cat's doing this, then something's going on. But so I developed this devotional practice, and it's something that I do every day. And when you establish a devotional practice, the thing that becomes evident is that when you stop doing your practice for whatever reason, you are aware of it. You feel the space, you feel that lack. And so I think that's a sign that you've established a practice, you've established these patterns, it's something to do. So those are my household spirits. And when I moved from that apartment, I cleared out the whole apartment, and there was 2 things left. I had a feng shui mirror, and I had a broom. So I took the feng shui mirror, and I went through all the apartment, all the cupboards, all the closets, everything, and I said, if you want to come with me, come into this mirror, take you to the next place. So I took the mirror to the next place. I felt that they followed me, not the big one. I think the big one is still there. Don't know what the people living there are like now. I'd love to know, but that's another story for another day. So I kind of was able to take my devotional practice with me. Some of us have devotional practice that are related to deities. People who are flame keepers or hearth keepers for breed or for breege have this devotional practice that's set up on a daily or timely basis with this goddess. And that's a great practice to have. I encourage everyone to do something on a daily basis just to keep your connection to the divine in your lives. I think it's important, and I think that it will open vistas for you that you may or may not be aware of. I think that once you open yourself up to the idea of devoting yourself to something on a daily basis and making those offerings, even if they're small, I think that you will find that it enriches your life. If nothing else, just for the discipline of it. But I think that more than just discipline, there is goodness that comes your way because of this. The Earth Mother book was a desire to write something for the Earth Mother, and I got Philip Pagano, Dave the Bard is in there, Christopher Hughes from Anglican Druid Order. I got them interested because that was one of the commonalities that we talked about earlier, and that we'll talk about later this afternoon. Commonalities between Druids. These are things that are important, reverence for the earth. And I thank them for being a part of that, and other ADF members contributed to as well. But I thought, what about expanding the idea of devotional practices to land, sea, and sky? What exactly does that mean? How does that manifest itself? So, I think that to talk about, and I've written devotionals for each of these components. If you want them, see me afterwards, and I'll email them to you or Facebook them, or however you want to get them. But one way of building devotional practice with the land, separate from like an earth mother kind of thing, or Vanir kind of thing, is one example I use is developing a devotional practice with your garden. Now, it's kind of late in the year right now, but for me, when I plant my garden, some of the stuff I plant by seed, some of the stuff I plant by plant. And when I plant them, I do it with a certain mindfulness, knowing that this is life that we're working with here. And so I say that, I will devote myself to this plant or to this seed as I'm planting it. I think it makes a difference. It makes a difference for me. I don't know that it makes a difference for the plant or for the seed, but I do know, I don't know how it is here in Ottawa, but where I live, the climate's changed, and we don't get as much rain as we used to get. I need to water my garden almost on a daily basis. We go for weeks without rain. So there is a relationship that develops between the garden and myself, because without the water, it comes from the hose, this garden is not going to flourish or thrive. So you plant these seeds, you plant these plants, and then you nourish them. And you see over time this development of life as it starts to arise. We live in linear time. There's no question about it that we go through January to December, add another year, and it all goes in a linear fashion. But I suggest and recommend that we start looking at things in more of a cyclical time, the cyclical nature of reality. Because it does not mean that our lives do not pass and that our ages do not grow. But I use the analogy of, if you look at the passage of time through the seasons as a clock, the hour hand becomes the years of our lives. So for some, unfortunately, that hour hand has just one number or less. And for others, it has 90 numbers or more. But as every year passes, we go through the cycles again, and that number moves up. It doesn't move up in that linear fashion. It's part of this cyclical thing. And by working with garden, life in the garden, or by planting a tree or something that's more based along this, we get a sense of that cycle. We get the sense of seeing what happens, and we get a sense of responsibility for devotion. Because without your intercession, without your help, these plants will not flourish. I talk to my garden. My neighbor is a good man and doesn't look at me funny anymore. At first, I could see him, I'm talking, and he's like thinking I'm talking to him, but I'm not looking at him. But I talk to my plants, and I care for my plants. That includes watering and feeding. It includes removing what's not necessary, taking out weeds, and just watching how things go. I live in the city, so I don't have deer or wild animals that come by. The cats may dig up the garden from time to time, but I tend to the garden. And so I see it as it starts to grow and get to a place where it blossoms, and then it offers fruits or vegetables. It doesn't have to be just a garden. It could be flowers. It could be weeds. It could be herbs. We have a certain amount of herbs that grow. We have rosemary. We have mullein that grows wild. We have fleabane that grows wild. These are still things that need care. We use the mullein, so this is something it's a gift that comes to us, and we water it. So the thing with these plants are that as it comes time to harvest them, here we go again. As it comes time to harvest them, when I pull something off of that plant, excuse me, I say thank you for your bounty. Thank you for your candy. I say thank you for your bounty, because I'm trying to be mindful that that my giving has resulted in my receiving something. So, and that's part of the process, and I think that the devotional practice is not just a practical application where, okay, no more tomatoes, I'm done. I think that there's still a requirement to care for that plant until the time where it's time for it to go. Usually through a frost. I will admit, my father used to grow tomatoes from seed. did so for many years. I'd go to Chicago, get a bunch of tomatoes, fly them home in the plane with me. I would go through like the X-ray thing. And then I would plant them and give them away. And so I had balcony tomatoes before I had a garden. And every year they would frost and die, and that was that. A few years ago, excuse me, when I was living first with the household spirit, one year I was like, I cannot see these tomatoes die. They've just been too good to me. So, much to the joy of my cat, I moved the 19 tomato plants into my living room. So, the cat got a jungle, and I got my tomatoes. And so I cared for them. I lost a few over the winter time. But I continued that care. And maybe they were Frankenstein tomatoes, because they didn't go through the normal cycles. 2 of them are still alive, a number of years later. But what happens is I develop a care. So the devotion really becomes kind of an interdependence between the two. And it's no longer about what it provides to me. It's part of caring for this living thing, caring for this thing that has value in my life. So the devotionals I've written, which I won't share with you to save time, I won't share with you vocally, but I'll share them otherwise. Basically, it's just something very brief that you can say when you go out there to work on your garden, and you can repeat it. Repetition is a great way, a foundational way of remembering things and building your own practice. So I go out there and I say these things to my plants. I also have a devotional practice that I do during the day. I have a long drive. I live 100 kilometers from where I work, so I have time in the morning to do my devotional practices. And I do them in my car. I have a little earth in the car, and it's a quiet time for just me and the road and my devotionals. So that's an example of doing devotional practice with your garden, and that emphasizes that annual cycle. So as the hour hand clicks off the years of your life, the second hand clicks off, or the minute hand clicks off the season itself, the year, the wheel of the year. This can also be done with a tree. If you plant a tree, it's a long-term devotional exercise. And some people plant trees because someone is born, someone has passed away, there's a wedding, whatever the case may be. But that's not so much a hands-on devotional practice, but I think it's an important one. I have a grandson, he's 4. He loves to go through the neighborhood and hug all the trees, which I really enjoy, I have to say. But it's something he does on his own. I may have done it one time around him. But, in this way, this young man is really developing a devotional practice. Let's talk about doing devotional practice with water or with the sea. Any questions so far? Okay. What kind of a gift do you give to the sea? Do you give water to the ocean? Do you give water to a river or a stream? It's kind of tough because there's chlorine in the water that may or may not be good for streams. I think that the trick, if you're in a system where there is tidal movement, your devotionals or your offerings could be in the form of things that you carve into the beach, into the area where the tidal practices happen. Those offerings are made. You can write them in English or whatever language you want to use, or write them in Ogham or Futhark, or make up your own language. You write them there, the tide comes, the tide takes them away. So your blessings or your offerings are taken out with the sea or out with the tidal passages. That's an easy one, because you write something down and the sea does all the work. But I think better devotional practice for waterways, especially in my area, maybe here as well, is many waterways are littered and have garbage in them. So the perfect devotional offering for waterways is not to give them something, but to take something away. And that is to clean up the stream. Clean up this body of water that's nearby you. You don't have to do the whole St. Lawrence Seaway. You can do just your little part. And that little part will clean up that little part and will benefit what happens downstream. And as the stuff upstream comes to you, you can take care of that you're doing your own little part locally, and get to know your stream. Um, when I lived in the place with the household spirits, I did some work to develop a relationship with the spirit of the stream that was next to where I lived. I found its name, what I believe is its name. So I was on a first name basis with the stream. And I felt that really helped me because I felt that it was meaningful. And it was just through trance and meditation that I did this. The name came to me after a period of time. So I wasn't just working with a stream. I was working with this stream entity named Ara, for example, in this case. Ara, the altar. So I got to see the stream through its changes of seasons, of height of water or lack of water, whatever the case may be. And it's interesting when you develop a relationship, a devotional practice with the body of water or the stream. There are other benefits that you get. Not that you need benefits, but with the garden or with the tree, you get shade, you get something alive, you get food in return. With the stream, you get the Zen beauty of water in motion and the sound that it makes. Maybe your stream doesn't make any sound. Mine did from time to time, depending on the amount of water in it. And that stream was a way for me to find peace and find some solace in a very small, piece of real estate that wasn't that big. So I did my part to keep it clean. It did its part to help me clean, to be cleansed. And I would go and I would say something every day to the stream, just as an acknowledgement. I don't know if it was so much to say, hey, I'm here, or hey, I acknowledge that we're here together. And this is one very practical way of doing a devotional with water. There's usually much more to this, but I'm kind of condensing things because of time, so I apologize for that. There are other things that we can give to water. We'll talk about them later if we get to that. I think it's really important to do. And I think that because we are mostly water, I think that there's a kinship between us and waterways. They're organized differently than us. They're open systems, we're closed systems, but nonetheless we are still comprised mostly of water, so I think there's that connection between us. Get to know your waterways. It seems kind of weird and banal, perhaps, but it actually isn't. These are living things. They're spirits of nature in their own way. So I would suggest that you get to know your local waterway, however big or small it might be. Even a lake would do. Devotions with the sky. What do we do with the sky? Well, sky's a funny thing. These are things that you can be devoted to that aren't necessarily named entities, aren't gods or goddesses. I say that after I name my stream. But sky presents us with some opportunities to develop devotions to events, for things. The sunrise and the sunset. At a lot of our festivals, we do devotional practices related to the sunrise. And some people will call names out, Iris or Ushas, giving names to the dawn, goddesses of the dawn. You can also acknowledge the dawn for what it is. Regardless of your religious practice, no sunrise, no sun, no religious practices. The world would cease to exist. So when you're in your grouping of gods and goddesses and entities, sun is important for religious reasons and for practical physical reasons. So when I see the sunrise coming up in the morning, even if I'm in the middle of my other devotionals, I take a commercial break and I honor the sunrise. I say, hail to the sunrise. Red in the morning sky, overhead, nothing escapes your view. I see your face at dawn. And I say something similar, overhead, nothing escaped your view, past tense. I see your face at dusk. And just a way of honoring these things. It's a way of counting time in a way. And sunrises and sunsets are actually pretty beautiful. It's a nice time to be outdoors if you can. And even if it's winter and it's cold, you can still appreciate the beauty of the sunrise. this is one example that we can use for doing devotional practice with the sky. Also, if there are things that happen in the sky that you find may interest you, certain kinds of clouds. I'm going to do a devotional practice with a cloud. Well, I mean, you could do something. People see things in clouds, and you could use that as almost a scrying methodology for seeing things there and honoring those things. Or maybe there's just certain clouds you like. Maybe you like those wispy cirrus clouds, and those mean something to you. And when you see them, they instill in you a sense of peace or a sense of wonder, and you can honor them at that time. So I would encourage you to take a look at the sky. A lot of people don't. Many people don't look at the sky, look at the weather on the television or on the phone, and that's all they care about. As storms come in as well, there's a lot of energy there, a lot of things to see in the sky. You can think about whether you want to establish a devotional practice. Now, the sky gets much more interesting when the lights go out. So when the sun goes down, then the sky gets really interesting. And there are many things in the sky that you can look at and follow and develop a sense of devotion to. Mars has been prominent in the sky for a while now. You could go out there and recognize Mars and say something about Mars. If you like that red light in the sky that moves, you can develop a devotional practice around the planet Mars, or whatever the planet Mars means to you. Or constellations. It's hard to miss Orion or Scorpio. These are, and you know, if you go out if you're the kind of person who goes out several times a night, I have a dog, so it's going to go out. You see these things move through the sky. You know, we're not such primitive people that's like an amazing thing, but it's still the movement through the sky. It's something pretty cool, and just to acknowledge these things in the context of seasonal changes or in the context of daily movement in the skies. This is something of wonder. Who isn't awed by seeing a shooting star? You know, saying a word or saying something to honor that moment. It's a special time. We're pagans. The world is alive. So this is an opportunity to recognize and appreciate these things. There's one really big thing in the sky that's really hard to miss, and that's the moon. So a lot of people don't look at the moon. Never look up, never think a second thought about it. It is there, it goes through its phases. You know, I've always thought of the moon for myself as being this eye in the sky. The eye, you know, the eye is very closed in the very beginning. The young moon is like eye barely opening. And the eye becomes more cognizant of what's going on in the world. It becomes full, and then it starts to diminish and start to close. And I think during that time, it's good to take a look at the moon. You're not going to see it every night, of course. It's not always clear skies. But it's still something that happens. And I think a really good devotion, a really good offering to the moon is water. So we could talk about moon water. If you're not, don't think that's too kooky. But if you have a bowl of water that you can put in a window someplace, it's a really great offering. If you have cats like I do, you might want to put a little bit more water in that dish, because that will be a point of interest just because it's there. But I have 4 devotionals that I've developed for each phase of the moon, and I say these things over this bowl of water, whether I can see the moon or not. If you spend time around the moon, you'll notice that when the moon is young or when the moon is old, when the moon is full, the behavior of the moon and what it does in the sky and the duration of time it's in the sky and when it's there is going to be very different. And I think that by saying these thoughts over this water, I think it's a good devotional practice. Once again, physical laws of the universe, that water is going to evaporate. But it's also being consumed as part of the devotional practice. At the end of the month, there is water left in that bowl if it's big enough. And you can use that's good old moon water. And that moon water can be used for a lot of things. That moon water, it has chlorine and chlorine in it. I believe at the end of that month, most of that chlorine and chlorine is gone. So if you want to put water in a body of water, a waterway as an offering, you can use that moon water to do so. Or you can use it to make offerings around the house or wherever you're going to do your other devotional-based activities. This is one of those things, those kind of devotions that you can do at home. And it's a pretty easy one. And if you miss a day or so, you don't see the moon today, nothing is lost. Your offering is still there. It's still working. So I think that these are simple examples of devotional practices that include things on the land, things in the sea or the waterway, and things in the air that can help us honor these things in life. Some of us may be pantheists or animists and see the gods are in all things. And in some ways, this is just a way of acknowledging that, kind of a generic way. Honoring the spirits of the land, can do that. I mean, a tree is still a tree in the wintertime. And, it's not hard to care for them and make offerings at that time. You can be creative for whatever offerings you offer. Water in the wintertime is maybe not the greatest offering. But there are other things you can do that you can hang on trees. Oak trees are wonderful. They don't usually give up their leaves, so there's always something to be gained from that. Hearing the wind moving through those trees, even in the wintertime, allows you to have some natural sound that is a certain thing of beauty and wonder. So, there you have it. Devotional practices of land, sea, and sky, including the moon, as quickly as I could do. So, there you are. So, thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see a copy of the devotionals I've written for those, let me know and I'll get them to you.